So you like Sabrina Carpenter's new song, Espresso, and you're wondering how you can make your own song in this style. I got you. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how you can make a track in a vintage disco and funk style similar to Espresso. And by the end of this video, you will end up with something that sounds like this. The most important thing to nail in a track like this are the organic instrumental elements, specifically the guitars. I think the very first element that stands out here in Espresso is the disco guitar in the intro. And it really sets that beachy, easygoing tone. So here in Sex on the Beach, we have something similar. We have this guitar part here. Now, obviously, if you're a guitar player, I would say start there. Create your chord underpinning and your guitar sound first. Have that be the very first element of your song and then build everything else around it. For those that don't play guitar, there are a few tricks that you can use to approach the sound. So the easiest, of course, is to find a sample to build your song around. I just typed in disco guitar into Splice. I found a few things that I think are pretty fitting to the genre. Another website I strongly recommend is Session Loops. Basically, they have these different guitar phrases, but you can change the chords of them. Like, check this out. Like, if I want this to be a different chord progression, I can choose something else. This is really great if you already have a top line and perhaps a chord structure. You can fit this to your chords really, really well. Of course, also, you can create your song using all digital instruments and then hire a guitar player later to lay down these parts. That way you get a lot more variation. Just in the song, we have, the main part here. We have this verbed out copy of it. Like kind of a room sound. And then we have distorted crunchy part as well. Just to add a little bit more energy in the mid-range. Of course, there are other types of organic type instruments that you can use. For example, here we have a nice Rhodes. And I'm also using Waterfall Rotary from Universal Audio, which really gives it that rotary organ type quality, because if you listen without, it's a lot more plain. This has a lot more character. And I would generally say for anything in this style, making things sound more lo-fi, more reminiscent of older music is really good. So any plugins like this that deliberately age your sounds are good. Obviously use sparingly. Next, let's take a look at the drums. So the main thing you have to remember about this type of style is that the drums are going to be inspired by the drums of the era the whole song is inspired by. So the 70s, the 60s, funk, disco. At that time, all music was using live drummers. So what we're going for here are acoustic inspired sounds, right? They don't have to necessarily be acoustic snares, kicks, but they have to sound close to that style. Like I wouldn't use an 808 clap in a style like this, for example. So this is what our drum section sounds like. We didn't use a live drummer for this song. This is all programmed, but a lot of the samples that we chose are specifically reminiscent of older music. For example, if you listen to the snare here, it almost sounds like a snare taken from a break from something like a Motown song, and it is stacked 3 deep. We have 2 that happen every single time, and then a third snare that happens every other time. So this is our first sample. So that's like that crunchy break. This one is a little bit more modern, a lot cleaner to add a little bit more attack and power. And this sample right here is a little bit brighter. It has more top end frequencies, so it just adds that little crunch of brightness. This is our kick. It's a 4 on the floor pattern, very common for anything disco related. And again, we have a stack of 3 here. So I am actually using a subby, very digital sounding kick as a bass. And then I have a couple of layers. And to explain this layering, so the main kick, it provides the sub and it provides the power. If you listen to this on speakers, you can really feel that kick. Now this layer right here, it is an acoustic sample, but what I'm doing here is I'm actually EQing out all the bass frequencies and even some of the lower mids, because without this, it sounds like this. You know, it's a full-fledged kick, but it is a little bit soft and it doesn't have that power and doesn't give that energy to the lower end of the song. And then the third sample is what I would call a click or a top. Again, this is a kick with all the lows removed, just so we can get that attack at the top to really help it cut through the mix. If we take a look at the hats, it's very simple. Now these hats are actually all acoustic hats. These are samples from Splice. And you can hear, you know, a drummer play this, as well as this. And I just layered these because they're a little bit different. You know, one has more attack, one has a little bit more tail. And then we have a few percussive moments here to kind of break up that really simple hat pattern. Very soft. It just adds a little bit of that shine. We have an acoustic crash. And then we have some fills as well. Sounds like this solo. So this is, again, a combination of digital elements with some more acoustic elements. This fill right here, it's literally 808 toms. This one, on the other hand, it's a break. Next up, I wanted to show you guys the bass section of the song. So we have two basses. So this is an electric bass that was played by Scott. Again, definitely something I would recommend for this type of song. Again, during that era and now in any kind of new disco type of tracks, people do love to use real electric bass. Again, if you don't have access to an electric player, it's okay. There's some plugins that are really good to imitate the sound. Like here, I just picked a random preset. But I've had songs come out with trillion electric bass on it, and you know, it worked well. But underneath the electric bass, we also have some 808s. Very subby. Turn these up so you can hear them. So as you can hear, this does not have a lot of information anywhere but in the sub. The one thing about most electric basses or imitation basses like Trillion, they're not gonna have a crazy sub, and most modern music still needs that like heavy low end. I actually have talked about this a lot in my 5 ways to make your track sound more professional video, which I'll link above. You know, sometimes you can sidechain this bass to this one. In this case, I'm just sidechaining them both to the kick, you know, because my kick is pretty big. Now let's take a look at effects, the types of effects that you can use in a song like this and make sound natural. Now I would describe effects in these types of songs as softer, not as aggressive or digital sounding. So instead, I would go for softer textures, for things that go with this beachy vibe. For example, in Espresso, there's like a it almost sounds like a seagull. It's probably like a cut up vocal, but to me it's giving a feeling of like a seagull, which that type of subliminal production, if it's not overdone, can always be kind of cute and enhance the song. If you listen to the intro of this song here, we have a lot of this type of thing happening here. For example, we have a reverse xylophone with like a pitch drop at the end. We have some like paper crackles and actually have a pump on it. Let me turn this up so you guys can really hear it. You know, it's something very soft, but kind of gives that like vintage texture because it reminds me of like a vinyl record. We have a sound of like a radio person talking on the radio. Again, with a pitch drop. So again, it's giving that like older, crunchier feeling in a cool way. And we have this as well. You know, again, more of a soft type of sweep versus something very aggressive. Again, you have to think about that era, the 70s. You know, they didn't have samples like we do now where they can plop them into transitions. So a lot of things almost need to be based on the kinds of sounds they would have had access to. Like, for example, right before the chorus here, we have this kind of gangy yell. It's so soft, I don't think you can even really tell its vocals until you solo it. And this is from one of the sample packs that we Lyre have. If you listen to it without any effects at all, it's an oh yeah. But we put some verb on it, a little bit of erosion, a little bit of panning, an opening envelope, and it makes it into more like an effecty thing. Finally, let's take a look at how we layer vocals in a song like this. If you listen to Espresso on the chorus specifically, you can hear a lot of layers of doubles, of harmonies, and later in the song, Sabrina starts singing a lot of ad-libs as well. And this song actually does a very similar thing. So I want to play you guys a later chorus with all the ad-libs, and let's take a listen. Whoever it is that you're working with, make sure you encourage that person to show as much personality as they can, because that I think is what really gets me in the Sabrina song, is kind of how she sings. It's just so like sultry and like sassy and fun. Now, as far as the layering for these types of vocals, you definitely need two doubles, you know, left to right. You could do more. I think Sabrina's song has more. This is what we have. And then we have some lows as well. Try vanilla, me in the sheets. This is like a classic layering, you know, octaves. Sometimes, depending on the melody, you can even do higher octaves as well. It depends on the level of thickness you're wanting to achieve. If you want it to be a little tighter, you can use something like Vocal Line to like really align these vocals with each other. If you want more of that like group quality, I would get more than one singer on it. Have people sing with slightly different timing underneath. And then of course you need some backgrounds. And this is me. And I actually think this is what adds a little bit of that imperfection that feels good. Because my timing is very close to hers, but it isn't like exact, never the same as when the same singer does all the layers. So if you want a little bit of that like live real quality, it's good to get other people on it. And of course there's the ad-libs, which here are like in the holes between the leads. Of course, you need to make sure that you're processing everything where all the vocals are kind of gluing together. You can hear it just from my solo here. The ad-libs have way more verb on them than anything else. I'm using Valhalla, and the color is 1970, which is very appropriate for this type of genre. On the leads, I'm actually using a little bit of slapback delay directly on the vocal. With it, without. And I believe this is what they use on Sabrina. I don't know which plugin, but you know, it is a slapback. You just set it to like a 1/16th, maybe 1/32nd. I think 16th is better. You can hear it a little bit more. Then I'm just busting out to like a bigger verb here, which is like a very watery Valhalla. It's just hanging in the background. And I have another delay, which is a quarter note. Okay, boy, very like wow, very wow, very detuned. And it's got like isotope vinyl on it too for aging. But yeah, that's pretty much it, you guys. This is how you make this type of beachy, disco-inspired song like Espresso. As always, if you have questions, please ask them in the comments down below. And on this note, I'm gonna go have an amazing day. Bye.